Dogworks Radio is sponsored by Alaska Dogworks. Check out their website at alaskadogworks.com. You can support this podcast on patreon.com/firstpawmedia.
This episode of the podcast is brought to you by First Paw Coffee Company, specializing in private label premium blend coffee. If you're serious about coffee, you should check it out. First Paw Coffee's passion is high-quality, small-batch roasted coffee. They take the extra time to taste and get everything perfect before they release new blends. They aim to bring you a cup of happiness each time you pour yourself some coffee. Find out more at ak.dog/free and enter for a chance to win some First Paw Coffee prizes, a book from our collection, and tote bag. One winner will be selected at random each month. That's ak.dog/free.
From First Paw Media, sponsored by First Paw Coffee Company, this is the Dog Driver Show. Visit our website at dogworksradio.com. Now here are your hosts, Robert Forto and Kourosh Partow.
Hello and welcome everybody. This is Robert and I'm here with my co-host KP, and we are at the Great Lakes Sled Dog Association Expo. And we've done a whole bunch of interviews while we're here. What a great turnout here in northern Michigan. What do you think, about 100 people?
Oh, definitely more than 100 participants here. Great event. It was fun to see a lot of faces I'm used to, a lot of old friends I haven't seen in months or years, as a matter of fact. And today we have two special guests.
Margaret Harvey, who is the acting executive director of ISDRA, and Dwayne Dittmar, who is the vice chair of ISDRA. And for folks that are listening, ISDRA is sort of the governing body of our sport, in particular the sprint sport and dry land and all of that. It's going to be interesting to hear what you guys have to say. KP, what do you know?
Well, I know both Margaret and Dwayne for a long time. Dwayne and Jan, I used to race with them in northern Wisconsin for years, a while ago, and both coming from a big mushing family. And Margaret and Rick Harvey, another big wonderful kennel we had in Michigan also, and so both of them were involved heavily in the International Sled Dog Racing Association in United States, throughout the US, Alaska, and Canada. And today I wanted to chat with him a little bit about what ISDRA does and how it is important to support this organization to support our sport. Guys, welcome to the show. I wanted to thank you for being here. Margaret, as the acting director of ISDRA, tell us, what is ISDRA about?
ISDRA is about promoting the sport, providing race rules that are, how would you explain them?
Well, you look at the term sanction in particular. A sanctioning body oversees that races are run by a particular set of circumstances, rules, and methods.
Standardized rules is what I was looking for.
That's
Sorry,
the
it's
big
been a long
thing.
day.
Well, yes, and that's what it's all about, is standardizing rules, because when ISDRA was created, the way races were run were very different from race to race. And particular mushers would go to a race not knowing what to expect. And that's why they created ISDRA, so that when they go to a race that was governed by ISDRA, it would be under the standardized set of rules and procedures. And that made it a lot easier in knowing what they would expect.
How old is ISDRA, Dwayne, for people who are not familiar with this organization?
It was established in 1966. I will answer for him.
Okay, thank you.
So that's 55 years old, this organization, right?
Right.
Yes.
Fantastic. And who created ISDRA? Do you guys know?
It was a group of people that wanted to see the sport take a different direction, and they got together in, I believe, Niagara Falls, and started the first board of directors, and it just blossomed from there.
I've been a member of ISDRA for many, many years, and of course, strong supportive, and I'm a regional director of ISDRA for the state of Alaska, as you guys know. We have a medal program through this organization. Tell us about the medal program and how it's organized.
The medal program is based on people's standings at races, how they perform at races with their canine athletes, and as they go to sanctioned events, they can gather points depending on their position that they finish at the race and the competitors that they're competing against. And there's I'm sorry, it's been a long weekend.
Formula? A point
Yeah,
system?
there's a point system that you follow, and depends on who comes to the race. They can bring points from a previous year based on their standings from the previous year. And, people that join ISDRA can qualify for the points and can qualify for the medals program. And it just depends on how they perform at the races.
So basically, instead of having just a one event world championship, these events are a series of events, and you have to gather enough points to win a first place, or second place, or a third place for this year. Is that correct?
That's very correct.
Yes.
And one of the other things racers can do is see how they rank individually, even if they're not racing against particular other ranked racers. Like, say, for example, there could be racers that are doing well in Alaska that don't see racers from the lower 48, but yet they're all in the rankings together. So they can kind of have a little friendly competition, even if they don't go head to head.
A lot of times, racers around the U.S. and Alaska, when we go to races, we have rules and regulations we have to follow. We call them ISDRA rules, and it's a little booklet that it's provided to all the racers with all the regulations, passing regulations, or start times, or bibs, or equipment that we have to carry. Why is, in your opinion, so important to have standard rules for our sports?
Well, once again, it's knowing what to expect when you go to a race, knowing what kind of rules you're going to run the race under. It would be similar if a track competitor went to a track meet not knowing how long the race was going to run, and that was sometimes the case. It used to be, but with this standardized rules, it makes it a lot easier for the competitors to know what to expect. And the ISDRA rules have kind of become a standard. They've been taken from rules that already existed, and these rules are always in a flux. As the sport evolves, we always are looking at these rules and defining them and tweaking them, because ISDRA is one organization that these rules evolved from the grassroots. In other words, mushers want some other rule change, something done differently, and they want everybody to go by that. They'll bring it to their ISDRA director, and a proposal can be made. Any member can make this proposal, and the whole body acts on it, eventually votes on it before it ever is put in place, and then it's put in place internationally wide.
So these rules are for different classes, Dwayne? Do we have rules for example, snow sled classes and dryland classes, or all the same?
Oh no, it's very different, because dryland racing is very different from sled racing. Ski joring is actually different than sled racing too. So each venue has its own set of specific rules, but some of them, of course, are the same across the board where they can be.
So for a lot of our listeners, this is new. ISDRA, they probably don't know about this organization. These rules that we establish for racers, for competitors, again, explain to us how they are created.
Okay, I guess I touched on it. Say, the original rules all began when the ISDRA board first met all those years ago. And they took rules from this organization or that organization, the best ones that they thought, and said, okay, this is what we're all going to run by. But as it goes on, things change. The sport evolves. It certainly changed.
One of the specific things that has been changed most recently with the rules is a ventilated dog bag, because of the public viewing us and being concerned about a dog that might end up in a bag, we have been concerned ourselves about making sure that that dog is safe when it's enclosed in a sled bag. So one of the things that we changed was making it mandatory that there was a certain amount of ventilation in a sled bag, so that when a dog is enclosed in that bag, they have an open exchange of air so that they are protected, yet they can continue to cool down if they're overheated, or they can get air if they've gotten overtired. So those are the type of things that continue to evolve, and the rules get changed as the need arises. Some of the dryland rules have changed quite a bit over the last few years because of the change in equipment. The equipment for dryland racing has just exploded in the quality of materials that they use and seeing the speeds that the dogs go. So the rules are ever evolving, and we change them to the needs of the sport at the time, and with the ultimate safety of the animals and their human counterparts in our forefront of our minds at all times.
So, guys, is a good analogy sort of like the IOC for the Olympics, meaning that you're this governing body over a group of individual clubs or associations, and you kind of set this kind of this linchpin, if you will, of things that they should follow. What I guess my big question is, what happens if a person breaks the rules? If you think about the Olympics, and the biggest thing in the Olympics is doping. So if a person breaks the rules, maybe just a minor infraction, what happens to them as a racer? Are they disqualified? Are they kicked out of the club? What happens exactly? And I'm sure different rules are different things, but what's the process if somebody breaks a rule?
Well, there's a disciplinary process, and the race marshal is the person who is in charge of a race from the time that the driver's meeting starts all the way through the end of the awards at the end of the weekend. So the race marshal is part of the rules infraction committee, if you will, and they could include a couple of other people to participate, and they evaluate what has happened, and there are disciplinary measures in place within our rules that explain what will happen if you break the rules. And it also depends on the degree of the infraction.
Right.
One of the things that we absolutely will not tolerate is any animal abuse. We have an animal welfare policy that's in place, and we follow that specifically. Every race-giving organization has provided copies of our animal welfare policy when they get their sanctioning packet, and we expect that the race-giving organizations and the race marshal will enforce that animal welfare policy to make sure that the canine athletes are kept safe.
Before I turn it over to KP, I have one other question regarding sort of the umbrella, if you will. You said that ISDRA has been around for 55 years, and I'm interested to hear both of your answers to this. What do you think is the biggest change? Maybe not just in ISDRA, but maybe in the sport in general. What do you see as the biggest progression in the last half century or more?
The speed of the dogs and the breed of the dogs has changed dramatically over particularly the last 25 years. From the time my husband and I got into racing, we were still racing what they called Alaskan Huskies, and you see very few of the Alaskan Huskies anymore. There are so many of the hound cross breeds, and the speeds have just gone crazy. The speeds that these dogs can perform at, and in a safe way. Yeah. They're built for speed, and they're built for the endurance, and that above anything else amazes me in this sport that has changed dramatically over the years.
How about you?
Well, one of the biggest changes also is when ISDRA was formed, it was formed by people who were close to being professional racers. In other words, they almost did it for a living. They ran big races, and they counted on making some money at it because that's what they were doing for a living. And another big change now is going towards smaller kennels, people having lesser number of dogs, racing more recreationally. They run for the fun of it, they run for the enjoyment, they run because they enjoy being with their dogs. And maybe that's a good thing, but it has definitely changed the nature of the sport, but they still compete very fiercely with each other, you know, and they still want to have rules and procedures followed.
One of the things that we hear often from people who are not ISDRA members is, what does ISDRA do for us? Why would we want to become members? And they tend to forget that when you go to a race that is an ISDRA sanctioned event, you are all following the ISDRA rules, whether or not you're a member or not. You're all following those standardized rules. You're all racing and competing on the same quality trail that is expected of an ISDRA sanctioned event. You're all using the same quality timing programs and the same expertise of the race officials that are out there, whether or not you're a member or not. So whether you're a member doesn't change anything with the event, and you are all benefiting from it, and we hope that more people will be encouraged to become ISDRA members and help support the organization that brings them these quality events.
Yeah, we talked about several items here, which was very interesting. Obviously, we talked about the ranking and the medal program ISDRA is offering. We also talked about rules and regulations and sanctioning events for ISDRA. Listeners, they can follow that on ISDRA.org, which is ISDRA.org, or on the Facebook page, of course, ISDRA. ISDRA, International Sled Dog Racing Association. One item we didn't talk about is how ISDRA rank races. And can you tell us about the event of the year that you select every year, which is, in my opinion, one of the most interesting part of ISDRA?
ISDRA, at each event, drivers are provided with a driver report form, which we are asking them to fill out. And to qualify for the event of the year, we have to have at least a 40% return of those driver report forms. So we're always stressing to the race giving organizations, make sure that you ask those drivers to fill out that form and return it. And within that, there are 4 specific sections, and people will score all the way from a poor all the way to an excellent. And based on their responses, we've got a formula that we follow to calculate out the percentages, and the highest percentage reports and results from each of those events, the highest percentage gets the event of the year. And it's a very coveted certificate that comes from ISDRA, and it's based on the reports from the drivers themselves, how they score. So
I think it's very important. As a matter of fact, Chugach Dog Mushers, we had the honor of receiving this award several years in a row for Eagle River Classic and the Dry Dam Derby also. We were really proud of that, and actually those certificates are hanging on the walls of our clubhouse in Chugach. In my opinion, and guys agree, I don't know if you agree or not with me, this certificate or this award also keeps the RGOs, the organization, on their toes to make sure they're providing safe trails, safe timing, safe organization for the event. Don't you think so?
absolutely, you have to get the highest quality scores on those driver report forms. It's the drivers themselves that are giving you a report card, so to speak. And if you don't do well at your race, you're not going to do well on your report card. So the better your event is, the better your drivers are happy, and the higher score that you're going to get.
How many classes do we have currently sanctioned during ISDRA events?
Classes such as
All the classes.
Such as all.
Dwayne is shaking. He says so many. All of them, yes.
in Dryland, we can have 1 dog men's and women's canicross. We can have 1 dog scooter, 2 dog scooter, 1 dog bike touring, 2 dog bike touring, 4 dog rig, 6 dog rig, 8 dog rig. So there are a multitude of classes in dryland racing. In sled racing, you can have all the way from, we are currently considering a 2-dog sled class, which has been run a few times under evaluative status, and there has been a proposal presented to the board to approve that as an actual medal status class. So all the way from 2-dog all the way up to unlimited, which is one of the classes that you've run several times. So the 2-dog, 3-dog, 4-dog, 6-dog, 8-dog, 10-dog, unlimited. So there's many classes.
Ski touring.
Ski touring, I apologize, ski tourers, I'm sorry.
Are there juniors involved in
Yes.
that? Wow, so just so many. KP, we just have a couple more minutes. I have just a couple more questions. We had talked about the past, how it was developed, and the rules committee, and all of that. And you alluded to, Margaret, one of the changes in the future is going to be a 2-dog. Can you let us know what is sort of the path of the future with ISDRA, or any other things down the pipe, as they say, with changes in the sport?
think the two-dog class is the newest one to emerge. When people are looking for other things, they let us know. They will say, well, why can't we do this or why can't we do that? So we're always open to suggestions from the membership, things that they might want to see. You can't run, I can't imagine us having many more classes than we already do, but we strive to always have quality events and quality races and a safe environment for the dogs and the people that drive their dogs. So, I don't know, two-dog is the newest thing.
Two dogs are the newest. Last question, Dwayne. I'd like to get from both of you on this, but we'll start with you. It's the question I asked all of our guests on the show, and I'm interested to hear what you have to say because you kind of oversee the sport, as they say. And that is, if a person comes to you and they're looking for one piece of advice, and they could be running in any class, whether it be ski jor or unlimited, what would you tell that person that's just getting involved in the sport?
The thing that I would tell them just getting involved is to learn as much as they can about the sport before they actually start purchasing dogs, purchasing equipment. If possible, find a mentor, find someone to go to and talk to them and learn from them. Too many people jump in thinking, well, I'm just going to wing it and do it the way I want to do it, and they end up making a lot of mistakes that they wouldn't otherwise have to make.
Very good. Margaret?
He took one of my responses out of my mouth. The mentor is very important. There are so many people out there in the sport that are more than happy to take on someone and kind of teach them the ropes. The other thing is, don't get in too big too fast. Too many people out there have dogs that need to find homes, and if you are open to taking dogs, you might get too many to begin with, and you just get beyond being manageable.
Yeah.
So don't get too big too fast. Find a host club that you can work with, a local organization, and find a mentor to work with.
You know, both of you guys mentioned the mentor, and this is an event where that's happening for sure.
Yes, absolutely.
We were talking yesterday about how we need more of these types of events because in our world up there, we don't do a lot of this. At least we don't anymore. And I think the more that people can hang out, talk about, learn from each other, that's the future of the sport, whether they're juniors or 50-year-olds. I think that's the way to go. And I applaud what these guys are doing at this club, and of course, what you guys do at ISDRA. You guys do a lot of great work. KP, anything else in closing?
No, I thank you so much for everything you do, guys. And for our listeners, these guys are all volunteers. They're not making a penny. They are giving hundreds of hours of their time every year to this organization to support this sport. We need to support this organization. Again, ISDRA.org, ISDRA, and ISDRA Facebook to follow the racers, follow the events, and follow the races. Thank you for being on the show, guys.
Thank you. We appreciate
Thank you.
it.
And on behalf of our guest today and my co-host, this is Robert for the Dog Driver Show. We will see you guys next time. Goodbye.
This episode of the podcast is sponsored by First Paw Coffee Company. Learn more at firstpaw.coffee.
From First Paw Media, this is the Dog Driver Show. We hope you enjoyed this podcast, and we invite you to subscribe in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcasts. You'll find a link on the episode notes. You can tap or swipe on the episode cover art, and you can see some offers from our sponsors. You can support our show by supporting them. If you like what you have heard, we would love it if you could give us a 5-star rating and tell your friends how to subscribe too. Your hosts are Robert Forto and Kourosh Partow. Our producer is Robert Forto and created for First Paw Media. We're living in uncertain times. If there is one thing we can be thankful for, that is the recent pet adoption boom. Shelters are being cleared out, and that means you may not know much about your new best friend. Alaska Dogworks virtual and on-site classes are the best way for you to build a lasting bond and learn about your pup, new or old. From setting up a proper routine to learning the commands and much more, Alaska Dogworks provides you with the resources to develop your dog into one of the best. Right now, Alaska Dogworks has an exclusive offer just for our listeners. Go to alaskadogworks.com now and use promo code DOGWORKS and save 20% off your training program at the time of your booking. Visit alaskadogworks.com and use promo code DOGWORKS to save 20% today. That's alaskadogworks.com and use promo code DOGWORKS at the time of booking.